Hello everyone, Patrick Fay here with my latest review of the Rugby World Cup after 3 weeks. So I'm here in my Wallabies jumper, and as you can see the Burnie Rugby Club rooms here decorated with a bit of green and gold as well. I guess that's fitting with the Wallabies playing tonight, and also one way or another guaranteed that they will be going through to the quarterfinals. So better start with the elephant in the room, that is the state of what's happening in Japan at the moment, and two of the matches in the last round of the pool games have been cancelled due to the typhoon that is due to come through tomorrow. So that means that the planned clashes between England and France in Pool C will not go ahead. So that's been declared a draw, 0-0. Both teams get 2 points. And then again in Pool B, New Zealand and Italy also cancelled. So yeah, 0-0 and 2 points for both of them as well. Now, yeah, look, this is a very interesting situation. It's the first time in the history of the World Cup that games have been called off, and looking online, a lot of negative comments about how there's no backup plan, and wondering how these games can't be rescheduled, or how they can't be postponed or maybe played at a different venue. I'm no expert on the logistics of organising World Cups or Test matches. I'm guessing that's not very easy to do. As for the lack of a backup plan and maybe a time when the games could be replayed, that's another tough one. It's already quite a long tournament as it stands, so I don't know where you find that window to maybe play some catch-up games, and possibly something that hasn't even really been given too much thought before. But with it being played in Japan, it's I think more prone to some of these sort of natural disasters than where we've had it in the past, and with people obviously saying that should question whether they should have been given the World Cup. Look, I think they've done a fantastic job of hosting it so far, and the main thing to take from this is it's disappointing, but I don't know what else could really be done, and I'm sure that these games would not have been cancelled if it was not absolutely necessary to do so. So that's disappointing, and but obviously it's the most disappointing for the teams involved. So England and France doesn't affect the fact that both teams were going to be going through to the quarterfinals, but France had an opportunity if they were able to beat England to finish on top. So and they haven't actually lost a game to this point. So could argue that they're a little bit unlucky to have to settle for second, and also Italy and their captain Sergio Parise has come out has been pretty outspoken, very disappointed that they're not being given the opportunity to play that game against the All Blacks, and I can totally understand that. Look, as far as I understand, Italy would have needed to have won that game with a bonus point to make it through to the quarterfinals. Very unlikely that would have happened, but you do have to consider there was still a mathematical possibility that they could have made it through to the quarterfinals, and really can't begrudge them being very disappointed that they're not getting a chance to play that. I think whatever the situation, no team would want to finish their World Cup without actually getting to play their last game. So yeah, perfectly understand why there's a lot of disappointment there, and look, maybe it's something that need to have more of a look at for future World Cups, at what can be done in these sort of situations. Not really the sort of thing that we expect to happen with rugby. Maybe at the Cricket World Cup it's something that you just expect to happen. It's just going to happen from time to time. Yeah, looking back, as I said, it's never happened at the Rugby World Cup, and we don't really consider that rugby is the type of sport where you're going to have matches cancelled due to the weather, but you can't blame the weather and you can't rely on it either. It's just one of those things that sometimes happens. The other thing is we haven't seen exactly how bad this is going to be, this typhoon. I think in a way the organisers, damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If it went ahead and something bad was to happen, I would imagine the backlash would be a lot worse. So a very difficult situation, and as they've said, decision was not taken lightly. So disappointing, and also really hoping that that it is just these two games at this point, and that this doesn't go on to have a further impact on this tournament. So Australia versus Georgia is going ahead tonight, and Ireland and Samoa is happening tomorrow. Now, I think the difference there is the part of the country in which these games are being played. So the Ireland and Samoa game in a different part of the country that is obviously considered safe enough for the games to still go ahead, and a bit of a cloud over the games to be played on Sunday, and quite a bit at stake in some of these. So at this stage they will either go ahead or they'll be cancelled. So really hoping that we don't see any further impact and that those games are able to go ahead on Sunday. I was interested in the history of cancelling rugby games, and as I said, it's never happened at the Rugby World Cup, but it's not. It is rare, but not entirely unheard of for this to happen outside of a World Cup tournament. Sometimes due to the weather, sometimes due to other things like security situation in certain countries. So I actually found an article online that, as far as I know, these are the only test matches and high-profile matches that have been cancelled. So you go back to Ireland versus France in Paris in 2012. So this game was abandoned 2 minutes after kickoff because the pitch was still frozen. So it was at least -5 degrees, and it was deemed that it was not safe for rugby to be played. From what I know, it was not a good look and a bit of a PR disaster. And then you go back, another example, Ireland versus Scotland and Ireland versus Wales in 1972. Now this for a very different reason, at the heart of the troubles in Ireland. So these were cancelled due to the security situation, obviously the threat of the IRA at that time. So a very different reason for why that didn't happen. There are some more recent examples this year even of why games didn't go ahead. So Russia versus Georgia earlier this year. So Russian authorities decided that demonstrations by radical persons in protest against Russian political actionism meant that the team would not travel to Georgia. Georgian authorities said they could guarantee the safety of the team, but in the end Russia didn't go and that game didn't go ahead. And then also probably remember earlier this year the Super Rugby match, Crusaders and the Highlanders in Christchurch, did not go ahead after the tragic shooting incident. So it's not, there are different reasons for why games have been cancelled. It is very rare, and the only other example that they mention is in 1981, Springboks versus Waikato didn't go ahead. This is obviously during apartheid, and there were massive protests against the South African team playing in New Zealand. So yeah, it's some pretty serious reasons for why those games didn't go ahead. Can't find any examples of games called off due to a typhoon, but maybe this is the first situation where we've been faced with that possibility. So yeah, I obviously had to talk about the situation in Japan over there at the moment. I'll move on from that now and go back into what I've been doing largely over the last couple of weeks. So taking a look back at the past week and what we've got to come. Obviously there are now actually not that many pool games left before we head into the quarterfinals. So looking back, we're going right back to last Friday where South Africa took on Italy, a big win there, 49-3 to South Africa. Now, look, that's a disappointing result for Italy. I think that although we'd have considered that South Africa were always going to be the favourites there, with their World Cup on the line, I think would have liked to have seen a little bit more from Italy there. So disappointing for them, but also showing, New Zealand and South Africa, they both look really strong, and I think, not surprisingly, are going to be two teams to really look out for come quarterfinals. So disappointment for Italy there in what's turned out to be their last game as well. But positive result for South Africa. And then on Saturday we had the Wallabies 45-10 win over Uruguay. So I think all in all not a bad effort, and always probably expected to win that one, and got the bonus point, which means that they will go through to the quarterfinals. Look, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement, and we're going to want to see some better performances from the Wallabies come the quarterfinals. But look, a few changes there, an opportunity to use some players that haven't featured in this World Cup yet. So obviously 19-year-old Jordan Patea getting to make his debut and getting a try, a good story there. And even Tavita Kurandrani, who hadn't played in the tournament up to this point, getting a go and was actually man of the match there. So look, plenty of competition for places, I think, in this Wallabies lineup going into this last pool game and then into the quarterfinals. Then we had England beating Argentina 39-10. Look, Argentina, they tried really hard here, and if they had won, they were still in with a chance of going through. That was always going to be a tough ask, and I think after they had a player red carded after only about 15 minutes, that made it even more difficult of a task. But credit to them, they certainly always hung in there and never gave up, but England too strong for them there, and that really ended any hopes Argentina might have had of being able to go through to the quarterfinals. Then another big one, Japan 38-19 over Samoa. I think that game's a little bit closer than the scoreboard suggests. Samoa was still in with a shot if they'd won that game. And I guess even though Japan had just beaten Ireland, they really need to make sure that they continued winning to stay in the hunt to make the quarterfinals. In the end, they were able to do that with a bonus point, so that takes them to the top of the ladder in Pool A and one step closer to qualifying for the first time. Then coming into the beginning of the week, New Zealand 71-9 over Namibia. Look, Namibia hung in there for a little while, but I think All Blacks were always going to be too strong there, so no big surprise there. And then France 23-21 over Tonga, so a bit of a late fight back from the Tongans there. A close call for France, particularly with what's happened. That win's will actually probably prove crucial to them, making sure that they go through to the quarterfinals. Yeah, look, a loss there for France could have opened the door even for Tonga maybe to have qualified. So yeah, a close game, but in the end, France France did enough to get the win and make sure that they will go through in second place. Then we had South Africa 66-7 over Canada. Another disappointing result for Canada that haven't had a great tournament. I guess the silver lining for them is they will, assuming it goes ahead, they'll get one more chance against Namibia for an opportunity to finish their World Cup on a winning note. So just have to wait and see what happens there. Then Scotland beating Russia 61-0, so big win for Scotland, and that means they're still well and truly in it. A disappointing way to finish things off for Russia, but I think they can be proud of what they've achieved as an underdog in this tournament, particularly in their earlier games against Japan and Samoa. And then what was the last game in the third week, we had Wales versus Fiji, and that was a really exciting game. A bit of a scare for the Welsh there. Fiji really showing us what they're capable of. Semi Radradra was fantastic. Not quite enough for them to pull off an upset, but yeah, a very exciting game of rugby and 2 man of the match performances in a row for him. So certainly some positives out of Fiji's tournament. Yeah, again, just that disappointment of that loss to Uruguay come back to haunt them. They really probably could have been in with a shot if they'd have managed to win that game. So, where are we at after 3 weeks? Pool A, we've got Japan on top, 14 points, Ireland 11, Scotland 10, Samoa 5, and Russia no points. So Russia are finished there. This is one of the pools that can change, obviously, depending on games coming up this weekend. Pool B, New Zealand on top with 16, South Africa second with 15. Now that's not going to change. They will be the 2 teams that go through in first and second from that pool. Italy finishing in third on 12, and Namibia and Canada no points for either of them. That's now the only game left in that pool, and obviously a chance for one of those teams to finish off their tournament with a win. So let's just see what happens there. Pool C, England on top, 17 points, France on 15 in second place. Again, that won't change. They'll be the 2 teams that go through. So Argentina finish in third on 11. Tonga and USA both have still got a game. Tonga are on 1 point, USA no points for them. Again, an opportunity for those 2 teams in their last game. Whoever gets the win will avoid coming last in their pool, basically. And then in Pool D, Wales on top, 14 points, Australia 11, Fiji third with 7, Georgia 5, Uruguay 4. Now, there's no doubt that Wales and Australia will be the 2 teams that go through, and there is just an outside chance that Australia could still finish on top. By my count, if Australia were to win with a bonus point against Georgia and Wales either lost or their game was cancelled with Uruguay and they only got 2 points out of that one, Australia could still finish first. So you'd think that is unlikely if the Wales game goes ahead, but just an outside chance. I don't, as an Aussie, I don't really want that to be the way that they would potentially finish on top of the table. Provided they go on to beat Uruguay, you can't really argue that Wales deserve to finish on top, particularly getting the win over the Wallabies. So what have we got coming up? Tonight we've got Australia versus Georgia. As I said, that one's still going ahead despite the weather conditions, but I think from what I've heard, likely to be a lot of rain there, so won't be much fun for the Wallabies, and will probably suit Georgia's style of play. Just that massive forward pack, and maybe the conditions that they're used to playing in Georgia will work in their favour. Looking forward to seeing that. I really like watching Georgia play, but I just think that the Wallabies they've got to win this one really. They'd still go through to the quarterfinals with a loss, but would not be a great sign of things to come if they can't get the win there. Then tomorrow, so the one game that is still going ahead is Ireland versus Samoa. Now, Samoa can't make it, but Ireland need to win that if they want to be safe. If Ireland win, they'll be through. It's interesting in Pool A, you've got Japan, Ireland and Scotland. All three of those teams can still technically finish on top of their pool, and any of them could still not make the quarterfinals at all. So I know Pool C was labelled the group of death, but I think you'd have to say that it's turned out that Pool A has really been the group of death. You've got three teams still in the hunt, so we can't say with any certainty who will even go through, let alone who's going to finish first and second. Still a lot of possibilities, but a win for Ireland, and they should be right to go through there. Then on the Sunday we have Namibia versus Canada. The winner will avoid coming last in Pool B. I'm actually going to go with Namibia in this one. They've never won a World Cup game before, and neither of these teams have had very good tournaments, but one of them's got to get a win. So I think Namibia have maybe just shown a little bit more promise, and if there was ever a time for them to finally get that first win, it's now. So I wouldn't mind seeing Namibia get the win there. Wales versus Uruguay, I think you'll see Wales win that one quite comfortably. And then the final pool game, Japan versus Scotland. This it's the last game, and it's going to be huge, and that's really going to determine who finishes where and what happens in that pool. So I guess the best thing for Japan, if they win, then they'll finish on top, and Scotland would miss out. But there are still possibilities there. So if Scotland win this game, then Japan can still miss out, which I think would be pretty heartbreaking given how well they've done and how close they've gone in these last two tournaments. It'd be a real shame if they managed to win 3 games, 2 World Cups in a row, and still somehow not make it. But unfortunately, I think that's a very real possibility that Scotland can win this game, and I can only hope that the game does go ahead. So there's a bit of a concern for Scotland that if this game doesn't go ahead, and Ireland beats Samoa, which is quite likely, that they won't get the chance to play off for that spot. And although that would mean Japan goes through, I think that would sort of take away from it a little bit if the one thing that finally gets them through is a draw. So either way, I really hope we get to see that game go ahead. I'd love to see Japan get the win. It's really too hard to call. Scotland have never beaten Japan Japan have never beaten Scotland in 7 attempts, but as we've seen in this World Cup, I don't think we can read too much into their past history. Clearly a much stronger Japanese side in this tournament than in previous years. So it all comes down to that one really. As I said, Japan, Ireland and Scotland, all of them could finish first, second or third. Very hard to call. You can say it is fairly likely Ireland will be one of them, and pretty likely that the winner of this game is going to be the other team that goes through. And that will bring us to the end of the pool stages. So next weekend is the start of the quarterfinals. So although we do know who some of the teams will be that will finish in certain spots, or at least will definitely go through, we can't say with any certainty who will be playing, who's going to be playing who at this stage. So the first one is winner of Pool C versus the runner-up Pool D. That is likely to be England versus Australia, but as I said, still some chance that the Wallabies can finish first, but we can say with some certainty that that will be England versus Australia. Quarterfinal 2, the winner of Pool B, so that's New Zealand versus the runner-up in Pool A, and as I've said, that could be Ireland, could be Scotland, could be Japan. Really don't know there yet, so could be the All Blacks versus Ireland, I think, is probably most likely. Quarterfinal 3 is the winner of Pool D versus runner-up Pool C, so that's likely to be Wales versus France. And quarterfinal 4 is the winner of Pool A versus the runner-up of Pool B, so we know that will be South Africa. So again, by no means guaranteed who's going to finish on top in Pool A. I'd love it to be Japan, so we might see Japan versus South Africa in the 4th quarterfinal. So just have to wait and see what happens over these next few days, and I'll check back in ahead of the quarterfinals when we know for sure who's going to be playing who. So I'll speak to you then.